I was slicing the pot roast when my sister reached for my husband's hand under the table. I noticed because I noticed things. It is an occupational hazard when your entire career is built on reading what people do with money they think no one is tracking. A twitch in a client's jaw when you mention their second checking account. The way a husband's signature speeds up on the third page of a prenup. Small movements, big data, that is my job. So when Sienna's fingers slid across the tablecloth toward Cole's wrist, not casually, not like passing the salt, but deliberately, with the kind of pressure that says, I am here and I am yours, I saw it. I saw it the way I see a column that does not balance, not with shock, with recognition, but I kept slicing. Because the pot roast was not the only thing I had been preparing. Sunday dinners at my parents' house had a rhythm. My father, Gary, would spend 45 minutes adjusting the thermostat like it was a negotiation with a foreign government. My mother, Diane, would arrange and rearrange the table setting until the napkins achieved whatever emotional state she was aiming for that week. And I would bring the main course, because somewhere around age 19, I had become the person who brings the main course, and no one, including me, had ever questioned it. That night, the kitchen smelled like rosemary, and the rain that had been falling since Thursday, Portland in November. The windows fogged from the oven heat. Everything looked warm and soft, and exactly like the kind of evening that could survive anything. It could not. Sienna arrived 40 minutes late, wearing a sweater that cost more than her car payment, which I knew because I had made her car payment twice. She hugged Mom at the door like she was accepting an award. She hugged Dad like he was a prop in the photo. She hugged me like a formality. Cole was already seated. He had driven separately, which I noted the way I note everything without expression, filed under review later. He had been doing that a lot. Separate arrivals, late-night showers, a new lock screen on his phone, a sunset instead of our dog. People who change their lock screens are either getting sentimental or getting sloppy. Cole was not the sentimental type. We were halfway through the pot roast when Sienna put down her fork. Not the slow, casual kind of putting down a fork. The kind where you place it at a precise angle, because you have rehearsed this moment, and the fork is part of the staging. She stood up, reached for Cole's hand, this time above the table, for everyone to see. Cole did not pull away. He did not look at me either. He studied the rim of his water glass like it held the secrets of the universe. So, Sienna said, we have something to share. She chose pot roast night. Not even a holiday, not Thanksgiving or Christmas or anyone's birthday, a regular Sunday in November. I suppose when you are about to detonate someone's life, the calendar does not matter much. We are having a baby. She smiled when she said it. The full smile, teeth, dimples, the one she uses for her Instagram stories when a brand sends her free face serum. She squeezed Cole's hand and looked around the table, like she had just announced dessert. My mother's fork stopped 3 inches from her mouth. A piece of green bean hung there, suspended in the kind of silence that makes you aware of the clock on the wall. My father looked at the tablecloth. His right hand moved to the napkin on his lap, and he pressed it flat, pressing and pressing, like he could iron the moment out of existence. Nobody looked at me. And then, everybody looked at me. My hand was still on the carving knife. I became aware of it the way you become aware of your tongue after someone mentions it suddenly, heavily. The handle was warm from the roast. My knuckles had gone pale. Something happened in my chest. Not pain exactly, more like a drawer slamming shut, a file closing. The kind of sensation that comes when a number you suspected was wrong turns out to be catastrophically wrong, and you realize the error was not in the spreadsheet. It was in your willingness to believe the spreadsheet was honest. I set the knife down, centered it on the cutting board, wiped my hands on the dish towel, left hand first, then right, then left again. Habits. I have a lot of them. They are useful when the rest of you is trying to leave the room without your body. Congratulations, I said. One word. Steady. The kind of steady that takes 34 years of being the responsible one to build. Sienna blinked. She had expected tears. Maybe. A gasp. A slap. Something she could post about later, captioned with a quote about choosing love even when it is hard. Instead, she got a 6-letter word delivered at the same volume as "pass the salt." Cole finally looked at me. Just for a second. Long enough for me to see what I needed to see. He was not sorry. He was calculating, running the numbers on how bad this was going to be. I recognized the look because I make my living sitting across from people who are running exactly those numbers. The difference was, I already had the answer. You are probably wondering why I smiled. I will get to that. But first, I need to tell you about a piece of paper in a fireproof safe in my bedroom closet. 2 years ago, I found texts on Cole's phone. Not explicit, nothing that would hold up as proof. Just warm, too warm. The kind of messages where someone writes thinking about you at 11 p.m., and the other person responds with always. No names I recognized. No photos. Just a frequency and a warmth that did not belong to me. I am a certified financial planner. I assess risk for a living. I build portfolios that survive worst-case scenarios. And standing in my kitchen at midnight, holding my husband's phone while he snored on the couch with ESPN still glowing on the TV, I did what I always do. I assessed the risk. I did not confront him. I did not have enough evidence. And in my line of work, confrontation without documentation is just noise. So I waited. And while I waited, I planned. Cole's landscaping business needed $35,000 for expansion. New equipment, a second crew, a contract with a property management company that could triple his revenue. He had pitched it to me over dinner napkin math. Big gestures. The kind of enthusiasm that made him easy to love back when loving him was still something I did without auditing it first. I told him I would fund the expansion. $35,000 from my personal savings money I had earned, tracked, and grown since my first job at 22. But I had one condition. A postnuptial agreement. Think of it as a business agreement, I said. You protect your business, I protect my investment. Standard language. Nothing personal. He signed it on the kitchen counter on a Tuesday morning. Did not take his work boots off. His lawyer reviewed it technically, but Cole waved through the details the way he waved through toll booths. Fast, impatient, already thinking about the next thing. Page 4, Clause 7. In the event of marital infidelity by either party, the offending party forfeits claim to marital home equity, returns all documented investment capital to the non-offending party, and agrees to spousal support as calculated by the enclosed formula. I wrote that formula myself. My attorney, Vivian Cho, turned it into language that would survive any courtroom in Oregon. Cole signed because he needed the money. And because his ego, that loud, shiny thing he wore like a belt buckle, told him I would never use it. She loves me too much, that ego said. Ego is expensive. Cole was about to find out exactly how much. I should tell you about the $1,400. 3 months before that Sunday dinner, my phone rang at 11 at night. Sienna. She had been evicted again. The third apartment in 2 years. She needed first and last month's rent by Friday, or she would be sleeping in her car, which was also financed by someone else and 2 payments behind. I wired the money before I finished brushing my teeth. $1,400. Did not tell Cole. Did not tell my parents. Did not ask Sienna when she planned to pay it back, because asking Sienna about repayment was like asking Portland about sunshine, technically possible, practically delusional. She thanked me with a heart emoji. I sent back a thumbs up. That is how we communicated. Her in emojis, me in wire transfers. I did not know then that the apartment I was funding had a second toothbrush in the bathroom. Or that the second toothbrush belonged to my husband. Or that the $1,400 I sent my sister was, in a way, subsidizing the affair that would detonate my marriage 3 months later over pot roast on a Sunday night. But I know now. The drive home took 22 minutes. I know because I counted the traffic lights. Cole did not come home. I did not expect him to. I assumed he was at Sienna's apartment, the one I paid for rehearsing whatever version of events they were planning to tell themselves. The house was dark. The dog a mutt named Calculations, because I named her and I am not the whimsical type, met me at the door with the quiet enthusiasm of someone who does not understand what happened but knows something did. I walked past the kitchen, past the living room where Cole's jacket hung on the chair like it still lived here, past the wedding photo in the hallway, the one where I am smiling and Cole is looking slightly to the left, which I always thought was the photographer's fault, but now understood differently. Bedroom closet, top shelf, behind the box of tax returns from 2019. The fireproof safe opened with a 4-digit code. The year I got my CFP certification. Cole never asked what the code was. He never asked what was inside, either. Some people do not ask questions because they trust you. Other people do not ask because they are afraid the answer will cost them something. I pulled out the postnuptial agreement, sat on the edge of the bed, read it page by page, all 11 pages, every clause, every signature. Cole's handwriting fast, careless, a man signing something he believed would never matter. It mattered now. I did not cry. Did I want to? I will answer that honestly. Yes. Somewhere between page 6 and page 7, the part of me that was still a wife and a sister and a daughter wanted to fold in half and let the document fall to the floor and call my mother and say, "Mom, it hurts." But the part of me that builds retirement plans for other people's futures, the part that has sat across from widows and divorcees and women who lost everything because they trusted someone who did not deserve the investment, that part opened my laptop instead. I created a new spreadsheet, named it 60 days, because that was how long I needed. 60 days to dismantle a marriage that had already been gutted from the inside. 60 days to protect every asset I had spent 12 years building. 60 days to turn a Sunday dinner into a reckoning. I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water and drank it, standing at the counter where Cole had signed the postnuptial agreement 2 years ago without reading it. The rain was still falling. Portland does not stop raining just because your life collapses. It is one of the city's more reliable qualities. 60 days, starting now, day 3. Vivian Cho's office smelled like printer, toner, and black coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. The walls were lined with diplomas, and one framed cross-stitch that read, "This meeting could have been an email," which I suspected was not ironic. I had met Vivian 2 years ago through a referral a colleague at my firm, whose cousin needed a divorce attorney, and ended up recommending Vivian to half of Portland's East Side. She was 41, 5'3", and had the kind of energy that made opposing counsel check their documents twice before filing. She did not do small talk. I liked that about her. "You look calm," she said, flipping through the postnuptial agreement I had handed her. "I am a financial planner. If I panicked every time the numbers looked bad, I would have quit 12 years ago." She turned to page 4. "Read clause 7. Looked up. He signed this. On a Tuesday. On my kitchen counter. Boots still on. And your basis for triggering the infidelity clause?" My sister announced at Sunday dinner that she is pregnant by my husband. In front of my parents. Over pot roast. Vivian set the document down, took off her reading glasses, put them back on. I have been doing family law for 15 years. I thought I had heard everything. She paused. I had not heard that. She pulled a yellow legal pad from a drawer. Walk me through what you need. What I needed was straightforward. Evidence of the affair sufficient to enforce Clause 7. Dates, communications, financial trail. Once documented, Vivian would file the divorce petition, enforce the postnup, and pursue recovery of marital funds used for the affair. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, but the postnup was a private contract, and private contracts do not care about no fault. How long do you need? She asked. 60 days. Why 60? Because I need 30 to document and 30 to execute. And because I want to serve him at Sunday dinner, at my parents' table. Where it started. Vivian wrote something on the legal pad. Then she looked at me over the top of her glasses and said something I would not understand for another 57 days. The people who plan for the worst are not pessimists, Marin. They are the only ones who get to choose what happens next. I nodded like I understood. I did not. Not yet. I thought it meant preparation. I thought it meant spreadsheets and PI reports and legal filings. I did not know yet that it also meant choosing who you become when the plan is finished and there is nothing left to calculate. But I would learn. Days 5 through 15 were the worst, not because anything happened, because nothing happened. Because I had to go home every night and be married to a man I was actively building a case against. Do you know what it is like to share a bed with someone whose betrayal you are documenting in a spreadsheet on your work laptop? I do. It is like being an undercover accountant in your own life. Every meal is a performance. Every "how was your day" is an interrogation you cannot conduct. Every time he touched my shoulder walking past me in the kitchen, I had to choose between flinching and maintaining cover. I maintained cover. Cole had no idea. That was the part that would have been funny if it were not so precisely awful he genuinely believed his life was continuing as normal. He whistled in the shower every morning. Same song. Some country thing with a chorus about trucks and second chances. Before, I found it endearing, the way you find a golden retriever endearing when it runs into a glass door. Now it sounded like evidence. A man who whistles in the shower is a man who believes he is getting away with something. I hired a private investigator through Vivian's referral. A woman named Dana who worked out of an office above a Thai restaurant on Hawthorne, and who, based on the efficiency of her intake form, had documented more infidelity than most marriage counselors. She started surveillance on day 6. At work, I functioned. More than functioned, I closed 2 new client accounts that week, both retirement restructures. There is something clarifying about dismantling your own life. It sharpens you, like a knife that gets used too much and starts cutting better instead of worse. My colleague Priya asked me on day 9 if I was okay. You seem focused, she said. The way people say focused, when they mean terrifying. Big quarter, I told her. She nodded. She did not push. People in financial services understand the value of not asking questions you do not want the answers to. Day 18. This is where the numbers started telling a story that made the pot roast dinner look like a prologue. I am a certified financial planner. I look at bank statements the way some people read novels for character, for plot, for the moment the protagonist makes the decision that changes everything. And on day 18, sitting at my desk at 7 in the morning with a coffee I did not remember pouring, I found the plot twist in our joint checking account. Venmo transfers, monthly, $800 to $1,200, always to the same recipient, always described as MISC or left blank. Starting 10 months ago. 10 months. The affair had been running longer than most subscriptions. I cross-referenced the recipient with Sienna's Venmo handle, the same one she used to split brunch tabs and request gas money from our mother. It matched. $8,240. That is the exact amount my husband transferred from our joint checking account, the account funded primarily by my salary, to my sister over the course of 10 months. That is not a fling. That is not passion or weakness or a mistake made in a moment of poor judgment. That is a line item, a recurring expense. He budgeted for her the way you budget for a gym membership or a streaming service, something you pay for monthly because you have decided it is worth the cost. I printed the statements, highlighted each transfer in yellow, put them in a folder. The folder went into my bag, which went to work with me, which sat under my desk while I helped a 62-year-old woman restructure her retirement portfolio after her husband of 35 years died of a heart attack. She cried in my office. I handed her tissues and walked her through the numbers and did not cry myself because I was saving that for later, or possibly never. I had not decided yet. Day 20. My mother called. Marin, honey. Nobody says honey like my mother. She loads it with 3 syllables and a request. Hun-ne-e. The 3rd syllable is always the tell. When it rises, she wants something. When it drops, she is disappointed. This one rose. Sienna is having a hard time. She is scared about the baby. She does not have a lot of support right now. I leaned against my kitchen counter, the same counter where Cole signed the postnup, and pressed the phone against my ear hard enough to feel the case edge against my cheekbone. She does not have a lot of support, I repeated. I just think, maybe you could reach out. Talk to her. She is your sister. My mother had a gift. She could frame any request as a favor and any obligation as an opportunity. Reach out. As if Sienna were stranded on a rock in a rising river, and I was standing on the bank with a rope. As if the river were not something Sienna had waded into deliberately, holding my husband's hand. I will think about it, Mom. That is what worries me, Diane said, quietly. I heard it, though, and I understood what it meant. She was not worried that I was hurting. Because a Marin who was hurting would cry and come to Sunday dinner and forgive and carry on. A Marin who was thinking might do something else entirely. She was right to worry. I said goodbye. Put the phone on the counter. Opened my laptop. Added a new tab to the 60 days spreadsheet. Family response document. All contact. Day 22. Dana delivered. The PI report arrived in my work email at 6:14 in the morning, sandwiched between a market analysis and a client's beneficiary update. 37 pages. Photographs, timestamps, location data, Cole's truck, parked outside Sienna's apartment, on 12 separate occasions over 3 weeks. Sienna leaving Cole's truck at the Safeway parking lot on Division Street. Not his job site. Not a client meeting, the Safeway parking lot, where they apparently thought nobody would notice a man in a Marshall Landscapes polo kissing a woman in the front seat at 2 in the afternoon. The timestamps went back 10 months. Not the 3 weeks of surveillance. 10 months of Venmo transfers matched the pattern of contact. Dana had pulled what she could from publicly available social media. Sienna's Instagram stories, geotagged, cross-referenced with Cole's job schedules that I provided from our shared Google Calendar. They had started before the texts I found 2 years ago, or rather, they had started, paused, and restarted. The texts I found 2 years ago were not the beginning of something. They were the middle, and the postnup I had requested in response was not prevention, it was preparation. I sat with that for a long time. Longer than I usually sit with anything. In my work, sitting with information is a luxury you assess, you decide, you move. But this was not a client portfolio. This was my marriage and my sister and the kitchen counter, where Cole signed a document he should have read, and the apartment I paid for where they spent afternoons. I was at my desk helping other people protect their futures. 10 months. My husband and my sister. While I was wiring her rent money and slicing pot roast for Sunday dinner and sleeping next to a man who whistled in the shower because he believed fully, comfortably, the way you believe the sun will come up, that I would never look at the numbers. I closed the folder. Dana's report joined the Venmo statements in my bag. This was not a marriage anymore. It was an audit, and the numbers were in. 58 days had become 38. I was ahead of schedule. Day 25. I stopped collecting and started building. There is a moment in every financial restructure when you have enough data to act. Not perfect data perfect does not exist outside of textbooks and people who have never managed real money, but sufficient data, the kind that lets you stop reading the spreadsheet and start rewriting it. I moved my personal savings into a new account under my maiden name, transferred my retirement contributions to a solo 401 through a rollover that was entirely legal and entirely invisible to someone who does not read his own mail. I formed an LLC, Ashby Financial Consulting, not because I planned to use it tomorrow, but because when the divorce finalized, I wanted a clean container for the assets the postnup would return to me. Vivian filed the preliminary divorce paperwork, unsigned, unserved, sitting in her office like a loaded weapon in a drawer, ready when I was. At work, I had the 60 days spreadsheet open on one monitor and a client's retirement restructure on the other. Priya walked past my desk, glanced at both screens, and said, "Busy quarter? Just restructuring a portfolio," I said. "The client does not know yet." She laughed. I did not. But I almost did, and that was something. Day 36. Sienna posted the pregnancy announcement on Instagram. A photo of her hand on her stomach, golden hour light, the Pearl District Bridge soft-focused behind her. Cole was not in the photo, but he was tagged. Caption: Our little miracle. Sometimes, love finds you in unexpected places. 14 likes. 12 of them were bots. I know because I checked. And checking things I do not need to check is apparently how I process betrayal. The post traveled fast enough. Cole's coworkers saw it. My coworkers saw it. Priya left a coffee on my desk that morning with a sticky note that said, "I am here if you need and nothing else," which was exactly the right amount of words. The pity was worse than the betrayal. Betrayal is private until someone makes it public. Then it becomes a performance, and you are the person everyone watches to see if you will cry. I did not cry. I added Sienna's post to the evidence folder and noted the date, day 42. My parents invited me to dinner, just the three of us. Neutral ground, no Sienna, no Cole. My mother's version of diplomacy. Diane made chicken parmesan, which she only makes when she wants something to feel normal. Gary sat at the head of the table and contributed his usual amount to the conversation, which was approximately nothing. "We know this is complicated," Diane said. She used complicated, the way realtors use charming to describe something that is actually falling apart. But Sienna is carrying a baby that is going to need a family. We cannot be divided. I set my fork down. Divided implies we were ever on the same side, Mom. That is not fair. Neither is asking me to make peace with the woman who is sleeping with my husband. But here we are. Diane looked at Gary. Gary looked at his plate. My father had perfected the art of being physically present and emotionally absent. He had been doing it since I was 12, and Diane had been filling his silence with her own conclusions for just as long. "I am handling it," I said. Diane's mouth thinned. "That is what worries me." Same words as the phone call. Same tone. My mother was not worried about the damage done to me. She was worried about the damage I might do to the arrangement, the one where Sienna floats, and I hold the rope, and nobody examines who tied the knot. I drove home, did not turn on the radio, counted traffic lights again. 9 green, 6 red, worse ratio than last time. The universe was not subtle. Day 48. The numbers stopped adding up. I was compiling the final timeline for Vivian dates, locations, financial transfers, all cross-referenced when I noticed it. Sienna had announced the pregnancy at Sunday dinner, claiming 8 weeks. I pulled Cole's work calendar. 8 weeks prior, Cole was on a job site in Bend, Oregon. 14 days, a commercial landscaping contract for a resort property. He billed every day, mileage included. Bend is 3 hours from Portland. He was not driving home at night. I checked twice. 3 times. The conception window did not match Cole's location. Now I am a financial planner, not an obstetrician. I was not certain. Bodies are not spreadsheets. Dates shift. Estimates are imprecise. But I had spent 34 years reading data, and this data had a gap in it. The kind of gap that, in my profession, means someone is hiding a transaction. I noted it, added it to the file, did not act on it. The postnup was the primary weapon. The timeline discrepancy was something else. A second door I might need to open, or might not. I would decide later. Focus. 12 days left. Day 50. 2 in the morning. Cole was not home. The house made the sounds houses make when they are trying to be quiet. The refrigerator cycling, a branch against the window, the heater clicking on and off like it could not commit. I sat in the living room with the lights off. Calculations was asleep on the rug, twitching through some dream about squirrels or whatever uncomplicated thing dogs dream about. The wedding photo on the wall caught the streetlight, just enough to see the outline of 2 people who looked like they knew what they were doing. I wanted to call my mother. The admission surprised me, not the wanting, but the specificity. I did not want comfort in the abstract. I wanted my mother's voice saying my name. Marin, 3 syllables. The way she said it when I was small and had done something right. But if I called, she would say, "Be the bigger person." She would say all the things that sound like love, but function like leashes. And I would hang up smaller than before. Vivian's words from day 3 came back. Not as inspiration, as arithmetic. The people who plan for the worst are the only ones who get to choose what happens next. I had planned. I had documented. I had restructured and filed and calculated. But planning does not anesthetize. It just gives you the right to decide how the pain ends. I could stay. Go back to Sunday dinners and pretend. The pain would be slow, chronic, the kind you learn to call normal. Or I could finish what I started. The pain would be acute, surgical, and then eventually it would be over. I opened my laptop. Typed 1 email to Vivian. We are ready. Let us set the date. Send. Close the laptop. Day 52. I picked a Sunday. Because if they started this at a dinner table, I was going to finish it at 1. Day 58. Vivian's office. Last meeting before Sunday. She had everything laid out on her desk, like a surgeon's tray, divorce petition, postnup enforcement letter, financial forensic summary, PI report with photographs, all organized, all annotated, all lethal. You know, Vivian said, watching me review each document for the 3rd time, most of my clients cry in this chair. You brought a spreadsheet. Crying does not have a return on investment. She almost smiled. Almost. One thing. Once you serve these, there is no undoing it. He will get angry. Your sister will get loud. Your parents will choose Sienna. I know. Vivian studied me for a moment. And you are okay with that. I was not okay with it. Okay was not a word that applied to any part of this. But I had run the numbers on every possible outcome, and in every scenario where I did nothing, the loss was compounding. In the scenario where I acted, the loss was fixed. One time. Painful and then finished. I am ready, I said, which was not the same thing as okay, but it was close enough. She handed me the manila envelope. Heavy. Not physically, it weighed less than a pound. But there is a kind of weight that paper carries when it contains the end of something. I had held envelopes like this before, across my desk, handing clients the documents that would restructure their financial lives after a death or a divorce. I never imagined holding one that was mine. Marin? Vivian's voice was different, softer than her usual courtroom register. For what it is worth, you did this right. I put the envelope in my bag. Same bag that had carried the Venmo statements, the PI report, the post-nup. It had become less of a handbag and more of an archive. See you on the other side, I said. Day 60. Sunday. I made the pot roast. Same recipe. Rosemary. Garlic. A dry red wine for the braising liquid that cost $11 and worked better than anything twice the price. I had been making this recipe for 6 years, every Sunday dinner at my parents' house, carried in the same ceramic dish that was a wedding gift from an aunt who probably did not remember giving it. The recipe had not changed. Everything else had. I drove to my parents' house in the rain. Portland in December. The windshield wipers kept a rhythm that I did not try to match with music. The radio stayed off. I needed the quiet the way you need a clean desk before a presentation, space to think, space to not think, space to exist in the gap between what you are about to do and who you were before you decided to do it. Diane met me at the door. She looked relieved. 60 days of near silence from her eldest daughter, and here I was, pot roast in hand, rain on my coat, showing up for Sunday dinner like the last 2 months had been a long exhale. I am so glad you came, she said. She hugged me. I let her. It was not dishonest. I was glad to be there. Just not for the reason she thought. Gary took the pot roast to the kitchen. He squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Did not say anything. My father communicated in pressures. A firm handshake meant approval. A shoulder squeeze meant I see you. A closed door meant do not ask. The shoulder squeeze was as close to tenderness as Gary Ashby got, and I filed it somewhere I would need it later. Sienna arrived with Cole 20 minutes after me. She wore a fitted dress that framed the bump 4 months now, visible enough to perform. She entered the way. She always entered rooms. Like the room had been waiting, Cole followed. He looked different. Not thinner or older, but tighter, like a man whose posture is held together by something other than muscle. He had noticed, over the past 60 days, that I had not cried, had not yelled, had not done any of the things a betrayed wife was supposed to do, and the absence of reaction was louder than any reaction would have been. I could see it in the way he watched me, quick glances, checking for damage, the way you check a fence after a storm. The fence was fine. What he did not know was that I had moved everything valuable to the other side of it. We sat. Same table, same chairs. Mine was the one closest to the kitchen, because I was always the one getting up to bring things. The pot roast went in the center. Diane brought the salad. Gary opened a bottle of red. Sienna talked about nursery colors, sage green, she had decided, because her followers preferred earth tones. Nobody mentioned the affair. Nobody mentioned the pregnancy's parentage. We performed normalcy the way only dysfunctional families can, with precision, with practice, and with the unspoken agreement that the thing everyone is thinking about is the one thing no one will say. until someone does. Sienna was describing a baby shower mood board. Rustic but elevated, like a barn wedding but for a baby when I put my fork down. Not dramatically. Not with a clatter. I placed it at the edge of my plate the way Sienna had placed hers 60 days ago, and I stood up. Actually, I said, since we are all here, and since this table seems to be where we make announcements, I reached into my bag. The manila envelope. I set it on the table, right next to the mashed potatoes, exactly where the pot roast had been sitting the night Sienna changed my life over a Sunday dinner. Cole saw the envelope. The color left his face in stages: forehead first, then cheeks, then lips, like watching a tide go out. "What is that?" he said. Not a question. A stall. I opened it. Slowly. The way I open client documents, methodical, unhurried, because rushing implies uncertainty, and I had none. Page 1. Divorce petition. Filed with Multnomah County on Thursday. You will be formally served tomorrow, but I wanted you to see it here first. At this table, where it started, Sienna's smile collapsed. Not all at once, it went in pieces, like a sandcastle when the first wave hits. Page 2 through 4. The post-nuptial agreement you signed 2 years ago on our kitchen counter. You did not take your work boots off. You did not read past page 2. Let me help you with page 4. I turned to the clause. Clause 7. In the event of marital infidelity, the offending party forfeits claim to marital home equity, returns documented investment capital, that is the $35,000 I put into your business. Cole, and agrees to spousal support as calculated in Appendix B. You cannot just, I can. I did. Page 4. Pages 5 through 9. PI report. Photographs, timestamps, location data, 12 documented visits to my sister's apartment, your truck, the Safeway parking lot on Division. The restaurant on Belmont where you used our joint credit card, which I appreciated, by the way, because it made the paper trail very clean. I turned to the final section. Pages 10 through 14. Financial forensic summary. $8,240 transferred from our joint checking account to Sienna via Venmo over 10 months. Itemized. Highlighted, with dates that correspond to the PI's surveillance timeline. I closed the envelope, set it down, looked at him. Cole's mouth opened. Nothing came out for 3 full seconds. When it did, it was the sentence of a man who had just Googled postnuptial agreement for the first time in his life and did not like the results. Marin, we can talk about this, we can work this out. You do not have to. I do not have to do anything, Cole. That is the point. For the first time in this marriage, I am doing exactly what I choose to do, and I am choosing page 4. Sienna found her voice. It came out high, defensive, the pitch she used in Instagram stories when she talked about setting boundaries and choosing authenticity. You planned this. You sat at this table 60 days ago, and you already knew. You are sick, Marin. This is sick. I planned this the way I plan retirement portfolios, with projections, risk assessment, and a very good attorney. You are welcome to review the documents. I had them notarized. Diane was shaking. Her hands, her chin, the water glass she was holding. She set the glass down before it spilled. Marin, this is not how family handles things. I turned to my mother. First time all night, I looked directly at her. No, Mom. Family is not how this works. Family does not mean I fund my sister's rent while she sleeps with my husband. Family does not mean I smile through 60 Sundays while you tell me to be the bigger person. I have been the bigger person. For 34 years. I have brought the pot roast and paid the bills and wired the money and kept the peace. And not once has anyone at this table asked me what it costs to be the one who holds everything together. My voice did not crack. I had practiced that. Not the words, the steadiness. In Vivian's office, in my car, in the shower at 2 in the morning. Not because I was performing, but because I knew if I cracked, they would focus on my pain instead of their accountability. And I was done making my pain the center of someone else's comfort. Gary was looking at me, not at the tablecloth, not at his plate, at me. His eyes were wet. His jaw was working, the way jaws work when someone is choosing between silence and the thing they should have said years ago. She is right, Gary said. 2 words. Quiet. The table went still. Diane turned to him like he had spoken in a foreign language. Sienna stared. Cole blinked. In 34 years of Sunday dinners, Gary Ashby had never contradicted his wife at the table, never picked a side, never said the thing that cost something. He did now. She is right, Diane, and we should have said it a long time ago. The silence that followed was not empty. It was structural. The kind of silence that holds weight because something has shifted beneath it, like a foundation settling after an earthquake. Cole broke it. Not with grace. Sienna. He turned to her, desperate now, grasping. Tell them the baby is mine, and we will figure this out. We will get a lawyer, we will fight the postnup, we will... Actually, I said. About that, I pulled one more page from my bag. Not from the envelope, I had kept this one separate, because this was not part of the legal filing. This was something else. The PI's timeline. Cross-referenced with your work calendar, Cole. The one on our shared Google account, which you never thought to unshare. I set the page on the table. Sienna announced 8 weeks pregnant at our last dinner. 8 weeks before that dinner, you were in Bend, Oregon. 14 days. A commercial landscaping contract. You build every day, mileage included. Bend is 3 hours from Portland. I let that sit. Counted to 5 in my head. A technique I learned from Vivian's silence after a reveal forces the other person to fill it with the truth or a lie, and both are useful. The conception window, I continued, falls exactly in the period you were 3 hours away, billing 12-hour days. Unless you drove home every night without logging a single mile and I checked, you did not. The math does not support what Sienna announced at this table. Cole turned to Sienna. The desperation was gone. Something colder had replaced it. Sienna, whose is it? It is yours, Cole, I told you. Then you will not mind a paternity test. Sienna's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. The mask, the Instagram smile, the golden hour confidence. The girl who always landed on her feet because someone else was always there to catch her, it did not fall off. It dissolved, like sugar in rain. My mother's hand covered her mouth. Gary closed his eyes. Cole pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping the floor, a sound that felt final. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. Put it on. Slowly. Not because I was savoring the moment I was not. There was no pleasure in this. There was clarity and relief, and a sadness so deep it did not have a bottom yet. But there was no pleasure. I will leave you all to sort this part out, I said. I walked to the front door. Same door I had walked through every Sunday for years. Pot roast in, leftovers out, repeat until someone breaks the cycle. I did not turn around. Not because I was trying to be dramatic. Because there was nothing left at that table that belonged to me. The rain was waiting outside. Portland, consistent as ever. I got in my car, turned the key. The wipers started before I touched them. They had been set from the drive over. Still ready, still working. 11 traffic lights between my parents' house and mine. I did not count them this time. I did not need to. The numbers were finished. All of them. Every last one. The aftermath did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like a bank statement, one line at a time, each one smaller than the last, until the total no longer worked. Cole's business was the first thing to go. Not dramatically, not overnight, but the post-nup enforcement required him to return my $35,000 investment within 90 days, and $35,000 is not a number you can absorb when your profit margin runs single digits, and your operating account has been quietly funding your girlfriend's apartment for 10 months. He missed payroll the second week. 2 of his 6 crew members quit the good ones, the ones who had options. His biggest client, a property management company called Bridger Holdings, that accounted for nearly 40% of his annual revenue, dropped the contract after Sienna's Instagram post made its way through Portland's landscaping community. I did not spread it. I did not need to. Sienna had tagged him. She had geotagged the announcement. She had, in the language of my profession, created a paper trail of her own destruction and filed it publicly. Cole moved into a studio apartment in Gresham. The house, our house, was mine. Vivian's enforcement was clean and fast, the legal equivalent of a wire transfer. Precise, documented, irreversible. Cole's lawyer tried to contest the post-nup on grounds of duress, arguing Cole had been pressured into signing. Vivian responded with the expansion loan documents, showing Cole had received $35,000 within 72 hours of signing. That is not duress. That is commerce. The judge agreed in under 10 minutes. I kept the house for 3 weeks, long enough to repaint the bedroom, long enough to remove the wedding photos and pack Cole's remaining things into boxes that I left on the porch with a note that said, "Please retrieve by Friday." He retrieved them on Thursday. I know, because the neighbor's Ring camera caught it, and Ruth, more on her in a moment, texted me a screenshot with no caption, which was exactly the right amount of commentary. Then I sold the house. I did not need it. It had 4 bedrooms and 1 occupant and a kitchen counter where a man had once signed away his future without taking off his work boots. Some spaces hold too much history to be worth the square footage. I found a 1-bedroom apartment on Hawthorne, east-facing windows, good light. A vintage shop 3 blocks away that sold furniture with stories I preferred to my own. Sienna's unraveling took longer, partly because unraveling requires a foundation, and Sienna's had always been borrowed. The paternity test came back 3 weeks after the dinner. Not Cole's. The father was a bartender named Travis who worked at a place on Alberta Street, a man Sienna had been seeing on Thursday nights during the same period she was seeing my husband on Tuesdays and weekends. She had chosen Cole as the father the way she chose most things, based on which option photographed better. A landscaping business owner with a truck and a crew had more narrative potential than a bartender who played bass in a cover band and lived with a roommate. Cole found out through his lawyer. I am told he sat in his truck in a Home Depot parking lot for 2 hours after reading the results. I do not know if that is true. I did not ask. I had spent enough of my life tracking Cole's locations. Sienna's Instagram went dark on a Wednesday. I know because Priya checked, not me. I had unfollowed months ago, which was less a statement and more a portfolio rebalancing. Her 3 brand partnerships severed ties within the week. The candle company sent a form letter. The yoga mat startup ghosted. The local juice bar, to their credit, called Sienna directly and explained that their customer base was predominantly women aged 25 to 45, and that the optics of a brand ambassador who had conducted a public affair with her sister's husband were, in their words, not aligned with our wellness values. Brands can survive scandal. They cannot survive looking foolish. It is the same in finance. Clients will forgive a bad quarter, but they will never forgive being the last person to know. My mother invited Sienna to move back home. I learned this from Gary, not Diane. The invitation was practical. Sienna could not afford rent, the bartender was not offering support, and whatever savings she had were fictional in the way that influencer finances often are. High visibility, low liquidity, but something had shifted in my mother. Not a dramatic transformation. Diane was not built for dramatic transformations. She was built for slow recalibrations, the kind that happen over weeks of quiet meals and avoided eye contact. Gary described it to me on the phone as, "She looks at Sienna different now." When I asked how, he said, "Tired. Like she just realized she has been watering the wrong plant for 29 years. That was the most poetic thing my father had ever said. I did not tell him that, but I wrote it down. Gary called on the 4th day after the dinner. I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment eating pad thai from a place on Hawthorne that gave you too many noodles and not enough sauce, which I had come to accept as a metaphor for starting over abundance in some areas, scarcity in others, and a general sense that the proportions would improve with time. Calculations was asleep on a blanket I had not yet decided where to put. The apartment still smelled like new paint and someone else's decisions. I had not hung anything on the walls. Not because I did not have things to hang, but because the blankness felt honest, like a spreadsheet before you enter the first number. Full of potential, uncommitted. My phone rang. Gary. My father was not a phone person. He was barely a conversation person. In 34 years, I could count on one hand the number of times he had called me without Diane prompting it. This was not one of those calls. I could tell because it came at 8:47 p.m., which was past Diane's preferred communication window and deep into Gary's territory of doing things he had been putting off all day. Maren, hi Dad. A long pause. Gary pauses were not uncomfortable. They were structural, load-bearing. He was building something out of words he did not use often, and the construction took time. I should have said something, at that table, years ago, not just last month. I set the pad thai on the floor. Calculations opened one eye, assessed the situation, and went back to sleep. Why didn't you? Because your mother was louder. And I let loud win. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing, the way people breathe when they are trying to say something that has been sitting in their chest like an unpaid invoice. That is not an excuse. It is just what happened. I know, Dad. You deserved better. From both of us, but especially from me. Because I saw it. I saw all of it. And I told myself that not saying anything was the same as not taking sides. He cleared his throat. It was not. It was taking hers. Every time, I leaned against the wall, pressed the back of my head against the fresh paint, and closed my eyes. The apartment was quiet. The rain was doing its thing outside. Portland, indifferent to revelations, as always. Thank you for calling, Dad. I will call again. If that is okay. It is okay. And Maren? Yeah? The pot roast was good. It was always good. I laughed. Small. Real. The kind of laugh that surprises you because you did not know it was available. After we hung up, I sat with it for a while. It was not forgiveness. Forgiveness has a settlement date, and I was not ready to close that account. But it was something. A line item I had not expected. An unscheduled deposit in a ledger I thought was frozen. I did not know what to do with it yet. So, I did what I always do with unexpected data. I noted it, filed it, and decided to revisit when I had more information. Diane's text arrived the following week. 11 paragraphs. I read it on the bus to work. which was a mistake because public transit is not the venue for parsing your mother's attempt at accountability. In 11 paragraphs, the word sorry appeared twice. The word Sienna appeared 9 times. The word I appeared 31 times. The phrase I did not know appeared 4 times, which was interesting because 3 of those times referred to things she absolutely did know, but had chosen to classify as unknowable. A financial maneuver I recognized from clients who categorize gambling losses as entertainment. Expenses. She did not mention the pot roast. She did not mention the 34 years. She did not mention the $1,400, or the Sunday dinners, or the fact that her eldest daughter had been functioning as the family's unpaid infrastructure since the age of 19. She mentioned Sienna's pain. She mentioned that families go through seasons and that she hoped this was winter, not an ending. I read it once. I did not reply. Not out of cruelty and not out of strategy. I just did not have the words yet. Or more accurately, I had too many words, a surplus of them, stacked and organized and ready to deploy, and none of them felt like the right ones. So, I closed the message and opened my work email instead, because client portfolios do not require emotional calibration, and that was exactly what I needed at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning. There was a difference between a door being closed and a door being locked. I had not decided which one this was. But I was in no rush. Some accounts take longer to settle. That is not avoidance. That is due diligence. 5 weeks after the divorce finalized, I hosted a Sunday dinner. My apartment. The table I bought from the vintage shop on Division Street. Solid oak. Seats 4 comfortably, 5 if someone takes the corner. I chose it partly because I liked the grain of the wood, and partly because the shop was 3 blocks from the Safeway parking lot where Cole and Sienna used to meet in his truck, and there was a small, precise satisfaction in reclaiming the geography of my own humiliation. Financial planners call that repositioning. Petty people call it revenge. I called it Tuesday. I made the pot roast. Same recipe. Rosemary, garlic, the $11 wine. Some things do not need to change just because everything around them did. The recipe was mine before it was ours, and it would be mine after. The guests arrived within 10 minutes of each other, which I appreciated because punctuality is a form of respect, and I had spent too many years waiting for people who did not understand that. Vivian came first, exactly on time. She brought a bottle of wine that cost more than $11, and a card that said, "Congratulations on your restructured portfolio," which she had clearly had printed custom, and which I planned to frame. Priya arrived second, with sourdough bread, and the specific energy of someone who had spent 3 months being careful around a coworker and was now, finally, allowed to stop. She hugged me in the doorway, the real kind, not the Sienna kind, and said, "Your apartment smells amazing, and I am never leaving." Ruth came last. Ruth was the woman who lived in the apartment below mine, 71, retired librarian. White hair she wore in a braid that made her look like a woman who had opinions about both Hemingway and plumbing. She had knocked on my door the day I moved in, carrying a pot of chicken soup and the sentence, "You look like you could use something warm that you did not have to make yourself." She did not ask why I had moved. She did not ask about the boxes labeled Kitchen Marin only. She just handed me the soup, told me the hot water took 90 seconds to warm up, and went back downstairs. I kept her. Some people you choose as family because they show up with soup at the exact moment the universe owes you one. We sat. We ate. The pot roast was good. It is always good, and I say that without modesty, because modesty about pot roast is a waste of everyone's time. Vivian raised her glass. To the most organized divorce I have ever handled, and I once represented a CPA who color-coded her evidence binders. You say organized. I say I had a really good spreadsheet. Priya laughed. Ruth asked for seconds. The rain tapped against the east-facing windows. Portland, doing what Portland does regardless of what its residents are going through. Same rain. Different window. Different table. Different people. Better people. Here is what I learned. And I am going to say it plainly. Because plain is how I operate, and because the women listening to this deserve plain. Blood does not make family. Pot roast does not make Sunday dinner. And a marriage license does not make loyalty. Those things are just paperwork. And I would know. I have read a lot of paperwork. The people who plan for the worst are not pessimists. They are the only ones who get to choose what happens next. Vivian told me that on day 3, sitting in an office that smelled like toner and old coffee, and I nodded like I understood. I did not. I thought she was talking about documents and legal filings and evidence binders. She was talking about something bigger. She was talking about who you become when the documents are signed and the spreadsheet is closed, and there is nothing left to calculate except what kind of life you want to build with the space that is finally entirely yours. My sister took my husband. I took back my future. Fair trade. And if you are sitting somewhere right now in your car, at your kitchen counter, on the floor of an apartment that does not feel like yours, yet wondering whether you should check the numbers, I'm going to tell you what I tell every client who sits across my desk with that look on their face. The look that says, I already know the answer. I just need someone to tell me it is okay to look. Check the numbers. You might not like what you find, but you will like who you become when you stop pretending they add up. After everyone left, I washed the dishes. The apartment was quiet in the way that only a space you have chosen for yourself can be quiet. Not empty, just uncluttered. Calculations was asleep on her blanket by the radiator, legs twitching, chasing something in a dream that probably had nothing to do with Venmo statements or post-nuptial agreements. My phone buzzed on the counter. Screen up, Mom. I looked at it. The screen glowed for 6 seconds, I know because I counted, and counting is what I do then dimmed. I did not reject the call. I did not answer it. I turned the phone face down on the counter, dried my hands on the dish towel, and finished the last plate. She could wait.